Tian instantly shot to his feet. "The brocade immortal," he shouted. Naturally, that silhouette didn't respond and didn't move either, only standing there, still. Tian pressed his hands down on the shoulders of the other two and whispered, "Don't move." A moment later, a night breeze blew by, and that silhouette of a man seemed to have sighed before dispersing, gone with the wind. Tian abruptly stood up. Just then, outside the door of the textile house, there suddenly came a knocking sound. The three all looked toward it, and Tian raised his voice and asked, "Who is it?" The voice of a man rang from outside the door. "Your Highness, it's me." Tian went over to open the door. Outside the textile house was a man with an open countenance, his form immaculate and chaste. He entered with his hands at his sides. Tian was slightly bewildered. "Lingwen, why did you come yourself?" he asked. Lingwen fixed his sleeves. "Since I heard your Highness say that things were difficult, I figured your typical heavenly officials wouldn't be able to assist. Thus, I've come to see things for myself. Greetings, Your Highness Ji. Why are you sitting on the ground? What's wrong? What's with that look?" Lingwen, in male form. Tian walked to that cloth curtain and flipped it open, and sure enough, there was nothing behind it. A moment later, he turned his head. "The brocade immortal showed itself," he said. Lingwen was amazed. "What?" he asked. "It should be it, I'm sure of it," Tian said. "It was a young man, very tall in height, maybe 2 inches taller than me. Judging by his bone structure, he must be someone skilled in martial arts." Lingwen was somewhat doubtful. "Your Highness, are you sure?" he asked. "In the past so many years, there's never been word that the brocade immortal has shown itself to anyone. Besides, didn't you say that none of these 98 ghost robes were the real thing? Could it be someone in disguise and playing tricks?" "I'm afraid that's not possible," Tian replied. "After that wave of chaos was over, to prevent ghost robes from sneaking out and harassing mortals, we shut the door and windows and set an array. Things inside couldn't get out, and things outside couldn't come in. There's only the 3 of us in the textile house. No one is plotting anything." Humming for a moment, Lingwen said, "Then the real thing must be operating under a special circumstance, or what you all saw was a silhouette of a vengeful spirit possessing one of the ghost robes." Lan Ying and Chuan Yizhen were crouched on the ground, both spacing out. Tian and Lingwen assumed the appearance of adults. They stood with their arms crossed and were in serious discussion. Finally, Lingwen suggested, "Why don't I take these ghost robes to the palace of Lingwen and have my people examine them? If that won't work, then we can make inquiries at the next meeting. I'm sure someone in the upper court is an expert." Giving the idea some thought, Tian nodded. "That's probably a good idea," he said. "But this was a mission we were responsible for, after all. I still want to be a little more thorough. Since the real brocade immortal is mixed in here, let me think of a few more ways to bring it out. If there are still no results by tomorrow, then I'll pass the 98 ghost robes to you." After all, this affair wasn't under the jurisdiction of the palace of Lingwen. "There's no need for your Highness to be so polite," Lingwen said. "Oh, if you'll be sending them over tomorrow, it should be 101 pieces, right?" Lian was taken aback. Why are there suddenly 3 more? Then it dawned on him. You're suspicious of the robes we're wearing right now? It's not impossible, Lingwen said. Lian lifted the sleeve corner of his cultivation robes, so worn that threads were loose. I've worn this robe for several years now. It definitely wouldn't have issues. The one Lang Ying is wearing right now was newly bought, but he didn't obey my words, so it shouldn't be problematic either. He told Lang Ying not to work, but Lang Ying still chopped wood. He told him to stay at home like a good boy, but Lang Ying still came out. However, Lingwen shook his head. That's not what I meant, he said. Your Highness, you might not be aware of this, but the essence of evil on the brocade immortal is strong, and since it's here, that essence would affect other normal clothing. In any case, just to be safe, don't wear the clothes you have on anymore, and do something about them. Hearing this, Lian quickly peeled the outer robes off of both Lang Ying and Chuan Yijin. Don't wear this anymore. Don't wear this, he said. Take it off, take it off. Then I'll wrap up the clothes and bring them to the palace of Lingwen tomorrow. I'll send people to come pick them up, Lingwen said. No need, Lian said. It's already embarrassing enough to trouble you every time. Your palace is busy. I can handle this myself. The next day, Lian arduously wrapped a huge pile of clothes and carried those large bundles by himself to ascend to the heavenly court. Lingwen had already been waiting for him in the palace for a long time. Today, it didn't seem as hectically bustling as before, with guards running back and forth. Lian unwrapped the large bundles of ghost robes. Colorful clothes burst out and spread around. He wiped at the sweat at the corner of his forehead as Lingwen walked over leisurely. Have you made any discoveries? Lian sighed helplessly. Much ashamed, it's been fruitless. I apologize in advance. Since there are no helping hands, it couldn't be helped if things are a bit scattered. There was so much chaos yesterday, I don't know if what I've brought is still all of the robes. I keep feeling like I'm missing 1 or 2 pieces, but I'm not sure. That's a non-issue, Lingwen said. Then she looked down and roughly counted. There really are missing pieces. Your Highness, it seems the robes that the little ghost next to you was wearing aren't included here. Lian's right hand clenched into a fist and lightly tapped his left palm. Ah, you're right, he said. I remember now. Lang Ying had gotten used to draping that robe over himself, and I forgot to collect it. I'll go grab it right now. Lingwen chuckled and said, No rush. Take care, Your Highness. However, Lian didn't move to leave. Instead, he stood still on the spot, his expression growing dim. Lingwen was about to order for the heavenly officials under her command to come take the ghost robes away, but when she turned around and saw that he was still there, with just the 2 of them in the hall, she was puzzled. Your Highness, do you have something else to say? She asked. Lian watched her with an unreadable expression. Nothing much, only I was thinking, if I really did bring you the brocade immortal, if I turned around, would you hide the real thing away? Lingwen's smile was fading, but still was extremely polite. Your Highness, she asked. Lian watched her serenely and said, From the very beginning, I've had this inkling. Of what? Lingwen asked languidly. Normal people, typical demons and ghosts, don't dare to break into the great martial temple, Lian said. If someone was familiar with the great martial hall, enough to steal objects that were sealed away and still escape capture, then I'm afraid that, other than Jinwu himself, there's only you, Lingwen, Jinjin. After all, the palace of Lingwen roamed all the palaces, day in, day out. It could be said to be more than familiar with everyone's domains. Lingwen grinned. Your Highness, your reasoning is a little too matter-of-fact. The person with the easiest access is the one who's the most suspicious. Based on that train of thought, then wouldn't Junwu robbing himself be more likely? Shilin nodded and said, I must admit you're not wrong, but what made me start to think that things were suspicious was that half maquillage woman. What about the half maquillage woman? Lingwen asked. Shilin replied. She had in her possession the fake brocade immortal and just so happened to come to my door. How can things be so coincidental? Besides, it was like she might as well have written suspicious on her face, like she was scared I wouldn't be suspicious of her being the culprit. Her intention was too obvious. Oh, what intention? Lingwen asked. Didn't she already say it herself? Shilin said. Exchange old for new. What she wanted was the old clothes in my Puchi shrine. In retrospect, when the brocade immortal was stolen, the great martial hall found out extremely quickly. They immediately started investigating the moment they realized. Therefore, the thief might not dare keep it in their own hands and would instead hide it away first. Then, where would be the best hiding place? Hide leaves amongst forests. If Shilin wanted to hide the brocade immortal, he would turn it into an extremely inconspicuous and normal-looking hemp robe and toss it in the mortal realm, but still keep an eye on it from afar. Normally, not many would want to buy such a coarsely made robe. However, the life Shilin led couldn't be said to be normal, and he himself had been wearing the same worn-edged cultivation robe for the past several years. The money he had could only afford such clothing. Besides, as long as the clothing kept him warm and was clean, that was all he asked for, and he wasn't picky. In addition, he was the kind of person who possessed the incredible ability to pick out the most dangerous article of clothing in the big discount bin out of countless other pieces of clothing. Thus, in self-congratulating cheer at the major discount, he bought and brought home that legendary brocade immortal. Your Highness, what you're saying is a little too much now, Lingwen said. You're from a martial guard background, after all. Thinking about it, you'd know that the half maquillage woman would be instantly subdued by you if she approached your door. She wouldn't be able to take any robes away, old or new. She certainly couldn't take anything away, but who said she had to? If there were no further incidents, how would she be dealt with? Shilin said. If Shilin had thought that the half maquillage woman had in her hand the real brocade immortal, then he would for sure report it to Lingwen, and then Lingwen would most likely descend herself. Like the day before, she would probably tell Shilin that for the sake of security, all the clothes needed to be brought back to the palace of Lingwen to be assessed. It really was too bad that Chuan Yijin was there too at the time, and it was unexpected that, after only having worn the brocade immortal once, he could directly determine that the brocade immortal in the half maquillage woman's hands was fake, which meant it was no longer easy nor logical for Lingwen to take away all the clothes in Puchi Shrine. All of Shilin's information was provided by Lingwen, and she could also make inquiries openly. Shilin's whereabouts and movements were fully in her grasp. When that half maquillage woman was exposed, Lingwen immediately sent Shilin new communication through the array and told him that the ghost city distributed many counterfeits in need of management, throwing new missions at him to give him no time to think too deeply about anything that might be questionable. I don't know if those counterfeits were distributed by you, but it was indeed you who provided me with information, Shilian said. With this step, you probably wanted to divert me away from Puchi's shrine before coming for Lang Ying. Yet, unexpectedly, Lang Ying also followed along and came out. I don't know if the brocade immortal showing himself so suddenly was within your scope of anticipation, but for you, thinking fast and changing course of action shouldn't be difficult. With so many ghost robes indiscernible as to whether they were real or fake, there would surely be a chance to slip the real brocade immortal away amidst the chaos. And with the brocade immortal showing himself, Lingwen could also use it as an excuse to appear personally, openly confiscating all clothing on site. As for how things would be assessed, how the real thing was to be determined, and the explanation of that silhouette, it would all fall to Lingwen. Having listened to this point, Lingwen made a pause hand gesture. Your Highness, please stop right there. So you believe that Lang Ying, that's his name, right? You think that the robe he was wearing was the brocade immortal? Don't forget, once he put it on, he still didn't obey your every order. Am I wrong? You said so yourself. You have to know that the brocade immortal's powers are extremely strong, and even a ghost king is no exception if he was to run into it. Shilian replied, You also said that it must be operating under a special circumstance. As for what exactly that special circumstance may be, I'm sure you're more well informed on that subject. Pray tell, you can answer that question for me. Lingwen frowned slightly and clenched her fists. She said softly, Your Highness, does this mean you've deemed me the thief? Pardon my honesty, but this makes me somewhat displeased. Shilian inclined his head slightly. I apologize, he said. Apology accepted, Lingwen replied. However, Your Highness, if you must be adamant about this, you may as well be, as long as you have the evidence. After all, this has been nothing but speculation. Shilian replied slowly. Before today, I didn't have any evidence. In fact, I didn't have anything before stepping into the palace of Lingwen. But I've gotten it since we first started this conversation. Lingwen made a welcome hand gesture. Please, she said. The evidence is, just now, you never bothered to count the exact number of those ghost robes, Shilian said. Lingwen's expression barely changed. However, her brows seemed to stiffen slightly. Shilian continued. The number of ghost robes I've brought was indeed lacking, but it wasn't just the one missing. In fact, I've only brought 88 pieces. A total of 10 robes are missing. Every piece of clothing I considered suspicious, I kept and didn't bring over. You never thought the count was off, yet with one glance, you noticed the one Lang Ying was wearing wasn't here. So pray tell, how did you know it was that particular one that was missing? Lingwen raised her hand. Please wait, she said. Without hurry, she recounted all the ghost robes on the ground once more and discovered that it was indeed 88 pieces of clothing. Maintaining her impassive tone, she replied, I suppose you can say no one is perfect, and there's always going to be something overlooked. Very well, Shilian said. Since you've counted seriously this time and should have looked over every single piece, then let me ask you something. Did you not notice the robe that Lang Ying wore yesterday was amongst those 88 ghost robes? Your Highness, what are you trying to say? Lingwen asked. Shilian crouched down and pulled out a robe from the random pile of clothing, shaking it open. It was a plain, white hemp robe. The one Lang Ying wore yesterday was this one. Isn't it right here? How come you didn't notice it when you were counting just now? Your Highness should also know that there's nothing special about this hemp robe, Ling Wen replied. So you can't blame me for not recognizing it with just a glance. It really is nothing to write home about, Xie said. Then you, Ling Wen Junjun, who is so competent and reliable, hardworking and cautious, why would you say so rashly that such an inconspicuous robe was missing when you hadn't fully counted? Ling Wen's smile did not falter as she said, There are too many robes, my eyes glazed over, scrolls are piled high like mountains. I'm overwhelmed. Your eyes didn't glaze over, it's the opposite, Xie said. Your eyes are too sharp. Let me tell you a second thing. I actually didn't bring the robe Lang Ying wore yesterday. The one in my hands right now is another one I replicated based on that original one. But I was careful with the details in this replica. So how were you able to tell with just one look that the real one Lang Ying wore isn't here? Ling Wen was puzzled. Fake or not, either way, I didn't see it, she said. Your Highness, have you worked too hard on cases, and do you always think too much? Why would you spend all this effort in creating a replica? Xie lifted that white hemp robe and said softly, This hemp robe was but a random one I pulled from the pile. What replica based on the original or careful with the details? It's all nonsense I made up just now. As you said, why would I waste my time making a replica? You've been tricked. This one isn't even the same color as the robe Lang Ying wore yesterday, but I questioned you, holding it in front of you, and never once did you think it strange. Xie stared at Ling Wen intently. Ling Wen, he said, right now, I only need you to answer a very simple question. What was the color of the robe that Lang Ying wore yesterday? Ling Wen didn't immediately speak, only raising her eyelashes slowly. That white hemp robe fell to the ground. Xie said, As the esteemed #1 civil guard, countless thousands of scrolls detailing the matters of the upper court all pass through your hands. Your memory shouldn't be this bad. How come you can't even recall the color of the robe Lang Ying wore yesterday? You can't answer because you're guarded against my potential trickery. You daren't answer so easily because you never knew what color it was in the first place. Because yesterday, what you saw him wear was only a headless, sleeveless, ragged cloth sack. He enunciated every word as he continued. The brocade immortal takes on thousands of forms, but that's no doubt nothing more than an illusionment spell. However, no matter how powerful that spell is, it will always be ineffective on one individual, the one who created it. No matter what shape it takes on in the eyes of the creator, it will always show its true form. Earlier, you glanced through those 88 ghost robes and didn't see a strange, headless, sleeveless cloth sack. So of course, you were able to immediately determine that the brocade immortal wasn't in the pile.